Good morning. I wanted to kick off with a story. And the story goes as follows. I was the marketing director of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, and I decided to take a sabbatical. I went to Australia to find either a husband or a job. And I found neither. So I landed up on the doorstep of my sister who lives in the UK. And I was paging through the Financial Times, and I saw the most amazing job. It was a position for a sales and marketing director for a professional service-based business. At that time, it was about 15 years ago. The position was going for £90,000, a car, and a housing allowance. And I got terribly excited about this job. The only problem was there were 250 other people who were just as excited as me. And the problem was that many had the same expertise as me. Many had the same skills and qualification. And I had to think quickly, what was it that was going to allow me to get this job? And I had to dig deep and look at what was it that made me different. What was it that made me stand out? And I realized that what made me different was that I was able to operate at a very strategic level, but also be incredibly practical. And that's the slant that I went into each and every interview. It got leveled down to 5 people. I had to write a 5-year business plan for the organization, and I got the position. But there's more. I had to be out of the UK while they processed my work application. And I came back to South Africa to pack up my life. And I met a man. After one date with this man, I knew I was going to marry him. He only knew 3 years later. But that's besides the point. I phoned the UK the very next day, and I said, I'm terribly sorry. I cannot take your job. I've met the man I'm going to marry. But what I did learn from this process is that it's very crowded out there. There are many people who have the same skills, expertise, and qualifications as you. And you need to find ways of making your personal brand stand out. And I want to give you a few indicators this morning of what it is you can be doing to make your personal brand stand out. But before I touch on the concept of personal branding, it's important that you understand some key concepts of branding. Lebo gave a fantastic definition of branding, that it's a promise made and a promise kept. I've got a slightly different definition of branding. And my definition is that a brand is a bundle of perceptions that are held in the mind of a target market. And it doesn't matter if those perceptions are positive or negative. The fact is, each and every perception counts. And the same applies to your personal brand. Don't even think of going out and building and marketing a personal brand until you understand what those perceptions are that exist about you. Because you may be wanting to build a brand in a certain way, but if people have very different perceptions about you, you have to bridge that gap before going out and building and growing a brand. I want to talk about some characteristics of a brand. The first characteristic of a brand is that they evoke emotion. Now, when I run workshops on personal branding, the first thing I say to people is, so give me some attributes of how you would like your personal brand described. And invariably, the attributes that come out are things like professional, reliable, effective, efficient. Okay? Do those sound like nice kind of descriptors? Now, let me ask you in this room. Who of you in this room would describe yourself as professional? Put up your hands. Yeah? Who would describe yourselves as reliable? Yeah? The majority of you. Who would describe themselves as efficient? Yeah, the majority of you. So let me ask you something. Do you think you can differentiate your brand if you have attributes that everyone else in the room has?
No.
No. So a brand, when you think about it, is like a love symbol. On one side of the equation are rational elements. So if you think about Coca-Cola, the rational elements of this brand are soda, a hell of a lot of sugar, and a secret ingredient that nobody knows about. But when you see a Coke clip, and I ask people, what does it evoke in you? Fun and happiness and made for me and share the moment. That's all the emotional stuff. So when you're thinking about your personal brand, what are the emotional attributes that you can assign to your personal brand? So if you start defining your brand as strategic, as visionary, as controversial, for example, that's the kind of stuff that's going to evoke emotion. Lebor spoke to the point of consistency. I remember when I was the marketing director of Nando's, I got very addicted to peri peri chicken. You do know peri peri is very addictive. It's also a great aphrodisiac for those of you that didn't know. Yeah. And every lunchtime, I would have my mild breast of chicken. And when I went to Australia, I started to feel a bit of withdrawal that I wasn't having my Nando's chicken. And when I walked into a store and I bit into this chicken and it tasted exactly the same, I knew I was dealing with an incredibly consistent brand. If you think about it, McDonald's is also consistent. The food is consistently cut, but it is consistent. Another characteristic of a brand's personality is they have special meaning for their target market. And what I say to people when you're trying to build a personal brand is that you cannot be all things to all people. The minute you try and be all things to all people, you will not succeed. I want to give you an example. I'm traveling down the highway with my two kids who are 10 and 8. And suddenly I hear these shrieks of joy from the back seat. Mommy, look, there's McDonald's. And I'm looking everywhere. I can't see a McDonald's. All I can see is a big yellow M on a billboard. What my kids have actually seen is Ronald McDonald's and the playground and the toys and everything like that. Because the more you understand who you need to appeal to, the more you can create special meaning for them. And that is particularly important from a networking perspective. Because of course networking is all about the value that you can deliver to other people. It's not about what you can get from other people. And the minute you start networking, focusing on what that person can do for you, you are dead in the water. So understand who you can add value for. Another characteristic of a brand's personality is they ignite passion. Who of you in this room have driven a Ferrari? Anybody? In your dreams. I want you to imagine, after this workshop this morning, that you step outside and there parked in front for you is a beautiful red Ferrari. And you open the door and slip into the leather seat and grab hold of the steering wheel. How's it feeling? Feeling good? Now here's the fascinating thing. None of you have driven a Ferrari before. But just by virtue of me talking about it, you can feel that passion igniting. So the question I ask you is, when people talk about you in your organization, when your networking contacts talk about you, when your customers talk about you, what passion is ignited in them? Now, Pete, let's just talk a bit about personal branding. How long do you want me to talk? I can talk for 5 more minutes. Is that all? I could talk for 4 hours on that. Okay, so let's just talk about this concept of personal branding. People say, Donna, don't you have to be a celebrity or a politician to be a personal brand? The fact of the matter is that each and every one of you in this room is branded already. Can you buy that?
Yeah.
You have a brand, and as Lebo said so aptly, your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. The most important thing I want you to understand about personal brand is if you don't take control of your personal brand, guess what? Other people will automatically do it for you. So what you need to consciously be thinking about is everything you do brands and markets you. Everything you put on Facebook brands and markets you. By the way, how many of you in this room have Googled yourselves?
All the time.
Okay. Those of you that have not Googled yourself, put your name in inverted commas in Google tonight and press the enter button. Because let me tell you, your Google CV will be the CV of the future. I don't know about you, but every time I go to a networking function, I ask for the list of who's coming first. And I go through that list and I say, who needs to network with me and who do I need to network with? And then I Google them to death to find out absolutely everything that I need to. So your Google CV is critical. And you know what's the first thing that comes up on LinkedIn? On Google, is your LinkedIn profile. So make sure that that LinkedIn profile is a beautiful story about you that highlights your best strengths, talents, and characteristics, that highlights your most amazing projects and positions you as a specialist in your area. I want to finish my last few minutes with a story to demonstrate how your brand is a bundle of perceptions. And it's a story of an amazing woman called Irina Sendler. Irina Sendler was a social worker who worked in the Warsaw Ghetto during Nazi Germany. And she was responsible for the control of typhoid. And although Irina Sendler was not Jewish, she made it her mission to save Jewish children. How did she do this? She went into the ghetto each and every day. She gathered children. She put them in large white coffins or in sacks. And she trained 2 Alsatians to bark profusely at the back of the truck. So every time she left the ghetto, the guards were too scared to look what was inside her truck. She placed these children in orphanages or with Polish Catholic families, and to preserve their identities, she wrote their names on little pieces of white paper. All in all, Irina Sendler saved 2,500 children. Towards the end of the war, she was captured by the German soldiers and tortured to such an extent that her legs, her arms, and her feet were totally shattered. Miraculously, she escaped and survived. And when the war was over, she went to find the parents of the 2,500 children she'd saved. And I don't need to tell you, all of them had been killed in the gas chamber. It is alleged that in 2007, Irina Sendler was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And you would think, is there any woman in this world who would be more worthy of such an accolade? But in that year, the Nobel Peace Prize did not go to Irina Sendler. It went to a gentleman, Al Gore. Now, although Al Gore was not an environmental scientist, what Al Gore had done brilliantly was position his personal brand as the man that was going to save the planet. And Al Gore got the Nobel Peace Prize not for the work he's done on global warming, but for a PowerPoint presentation. In 2008, Irina Sendler died, not having received the recognition she so deserved. But we can learn some powerful lessons from Al and Irina. If you don't take control of your personal brand, if you don't package it effectively and go out and market it, you may very well not achieve the career and business success that you deserve, because you are the brand. Take control of your personal brand.